I am here back for another video. So, I left off with the presidential elections. I left off at this part. And this is where we stop. This is the halfway point for the presidential elections. In 1860. The election of 1860 was unprecedented. People wanted presidents. People wanted a president. See, the Republicans had just existed. Had put their first candidate in 1856. And that first candidate lost. But here's the thing. The Democrats, the Constitutional Party, and the Constitutional Party did want something a little bit more. They didn't want Abraham Lincoln to be president because I'm doing a YouTube video right now. The reason why they didn't want Lincoln to be president is because they said he was going to take away slaves. But in 1860, so this is my second part where I tell you who I would vote for from 1788 to 2021. So this is 1860 to 2021. Well, 1860 to 19. This is from 1860 to 1960. This episode is going to be 3 parts, from 1960 to 1988, and from 1988 to 2021. So let's get right into it. So in 1860, I am a black Southerner, and the thing is that I read the history books. Yeah, Lincoln did so much good for the slaves, but we can't say Lincoln was all that perfect. Lincoln had his struggles, but I'd still vote for him. I'd still do it. Alright, so now we go to 1864. So it's 1864. There's only a Democrat. There's only not Southern Democrats, Northern Democrats that want peace. And there's also Confederate states. The states that are in the dark gray are Confederate states. Johnny goes marching home. Johnny goes marching home. So in 1864, I would vote for McClellan. I mean, come on, George McClellan is a general, but I mean, I would if McClellan was president before, I would, but I'd have to still vote Lincoln. So next we go to 1868. Only 3 states that are not restored to the Union. Only 3 states that are not unionized, which is Texas, Mississippi, and Virginia. The rest of the states choose a general as president. General Ulysses S. Grant. Grant cracks down on the South after President Andrew Johnson becomes the first president to be impeached. Andrew Johnson was the first president to ever be impeached. So the only reason why is because he didn't take Reconstruction seriously. So, yeah. Just giving you a little fun fact in history. Also, another state was added to the Union in 1864, in 1863, and in 1868. Nebraska, West Virginia, Minnesota, and Nevada. Those states were recently added during and after the Civil War. So, in 1868, Ulysses S. Grant eventually chases the the KKK. Okay? I'm not going to say the Ku Klux Klan. The reason why I'm not going to say it that much, because I fear for my safety. I fear for a lot of my safety, actually. By uttering those words out of my mouth, I fear for my safety. And I'm not really safe. I don't feel safe about talking about it on YouTube. So, that's why. So, let's just continue on. So, Ulysses S. Grant. He was a really good president, I could say. So I'd vote for him in 68. In 72, I would vote for him. Rutherford B. Hayes. I would vote for Tilden. I would vote for Samuel J. Tilden. I'd have to, because R.B. Hayes had stopped Reconstruction in the South. So, James A. Garfield. Oh my god. This is the one. If I say Winfield Hancock. If I say Winfield Scott, if I say Winfield Hancock, I'm gonna feel so guilty if I say that. If I say that, if I say I'll vote for him, I'll feel so guilty. Also, one more state was added to the union, which is the state of Colorado. But besides that point, so like if I would vote for James Garfield, I'd vote for Garfield. But spoiler alert for all the history buffs that didn't know this, Garfield died within 2 months into his presidency. He died from gunshot wounds that were not, and I repeat, they were not fatal. The doctors had tried to take the bullets out in Washington D.C. If you've ever been there, there's a train station called Union Station, and guess what? They tried to take the bullets out of him on the train station floor. On the train station floor. And he ended up going into a coma, and he got sick with an infection that they couldn't treat, and he died. And then after that, so after that, President Chester A. Arthur took his place in 1884. Till 1884, he fulfilled Garfield's memory. He preserved Garfield's memory. So what happened is he got reform. So James A. Garfield wanted to have reform for black citizens and white citizens. He didn't get a chance to see the reform. Till eventually Chester A. Arthur, he eventually got the reform done. He got reform for people, so people could have more money in their pockets in that day. 1884 was Grover Cleveland. He was number 24 and 26. He was president number 24 and 26. So basically, we all know about Grover Cleveland. He was the 24th and 26th. He was 24 and 26. He was president 24 and 26. So it's like I feel like I need to explain Grover Cleveland. It's that there's enough in history about him where I don't have to explain it. But for James A. Garfield, I would vote for him. But for Grover Cleveland, I would vote for... I'm sorry, but I would definitely have to vote for James G. Blaine. I'd have to vote for Blaine. I would have to. I mean, there's some policies that Cleveland had that I wouldn't agree with. But Benjamin Harrison, I would vote for it. I would vote for Benjamin Harrison. And also, if you guys don't know who Benjamin Harrison is, he is the grandson of William Henry Harrison, the ninth president of the United States. And eventually, what happened after that? William Henry Harrison died of pneumonia, and then Benjamin Harrison, a few years after his presidency, he died from the same thing his grandfather did, which is a fitting way to look at it, a fitting way to go. I think you did. If you guys are asking who that is in the background, that's just my dad asking me a question. Never mind. But I would vote for Harris. I would vote for Benjamin Harrison. You didn't leave it in there. I looked in there. You didn't leave it in there. I'm sorry, guys. But anyway, we're going to 1892. In 1892, this is between the turn of the 20th century. So Benjamin Harrison loses his second term to Grover Cleveland. So this is actually the kind of part that in history, this pisses me off a bit. It pisses me off a little bit, but it surprises me ever more. It's surprising that Grover Cleveland took a comeback. He's the first president in history to like be defeated, and then he shows right back up and he takes a spot again. It's either Grover Cleveland didn't give up, but in this case, Grover Cleveland did do amazing things in his next presidency. Also, the state of Montana, North and South Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado. And then some states show up like Washington State, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, and Wyoming. They show up. Yeah, so I was right. Those states there show up. In 1892, and then we go to 1896, which is William McKinley. William McKinley this is the first time the Democrats have pulled on a giant vote sway like this in the 1800s. But what really mattered was, you see up there, Maine all the way down, and then back up towards Minnesota, and then parts of Oregon and California. Those areas are key Democrats. In this current day, those areas right here and some of these over here are key Democrats. But over here, the South has never been Democratic, except when the Democrats were anti-slave, anti-black person. That's how it was. I understand that the Democrats aren't that perfect, and I understand Republicans aren't perfect either. But in this case, I would vote for William McKinley, because he would bring a lot of change, and he would fight the Spanish-American War, which would give us the territory of American Samoa, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico. And we did get Cuba. We did get Cuba for a while until we had to let it go and be independent. Until the Cuban-American War. And then in 1900, it's the 20th century. Everybody has such a good feeling about the 20th century. I would vote for McKinley. Yeah, Utah shows up into the Union. Okay? Utah is the new state around the block. So, Utah's there. They vote McKinley first time. First time they just vote McKinley. But, see, I'd choose McKinley in 1900. But the sad part is, even if I vote for McKinley, McKinley wouldn't get to see his second term because he died and he got assassinated by a mafia member. So he got assassinated. That's clear. Next, we'd go to Theodore Roosevelt. Oh my god. Like, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt would be, like, the best president nowadays. If he, like, were to live until, like, if he could live now, he could give all of our presidents in the 2000s some advice. Donald Trump could use a little bit of advice from him. Because Roosevelt was sort of like in the Trump position. But Roosevelt was sort of in the Truman position, where his president died, and then Roosevelt had to take over. But Roosevelt brought a lot of change and made more national parks in the United States, which could help us preserve the buffalo population and our wildlife, and then that would preserve the Indian territories, the Indian preserves. So this would work. The Indian territories would be preservated. So that way no one could harm at the Indians. So that's good. So I'd vote for him. Alright, so 1908, William Howard Taft VC. He was the biggest man in the presidency. I would not vote for him. Absolutely not. I would vote for Bryant. I'd vote for William J. Bryant from Nebraska. I'd vote for him. Minnesota. Oh, I would vote for him, either him or the Populist Party in Georgia. Either him or that. So, 1912, this is where the American national anthem changes from Hail Columbia to the Star-Spangled Banner. This is where Woodrow Wilson, for the first time ever, in almost a full century, this has been a full century. 1912 makes a century, and that means the Democrats take back control. The Democrats take back control. So I would vote for Woodrow Wilson. He helped. See, the thing is that Theodore Roosevelt wanted to go back into office. He wanted to do. See, Theodore Roosevelt, when he saw what Taft was doing to his national parks. So what Taft did to the national parks, he tore down the national parks. He destroyed national parks. He wanted them to be torn down and given to the state. But they were already in the state. There was a federal law to have the national parks. But anyway, like, the one state, see, like, Woodrow Wilson's a Democrat from New Jersey, and I like Democrats from New Jersey. So, so I would vote for either Theodore Roosevelt or Woodrow Wilson. But Wilson, in my opinion, is the pick. Okay? And this is the first major Democratic victory. I think the biggest Democratic victory since, like, Andrew Jackson. Like, Andrew Jackson had a major Democratic victory when he was president. So this is going to be... Oh, if you guys want to see that video, the link is going to be down below. Check it out. But anyway, like, this is the first major Democratic victory since Andrew Jackson in his first and second term. So, alright, so then we go to 1913. We go from post-World War I. We go from post-World War I to the aftermath of World War I. So in 1916, Woodrow Wilson eventually wins his second term, which is another Democratic victory. And then Warren G. Harding is elected as president in 1920, which is, so basically this is 20 years later. 20 years after William McKinley died. This is 20 years later. 20 years after McKinley died, Warren G. Harding would die in the presidency from a heart attack. So, and we all know the curse of Tippecanoe. And then, like, so basically the curse of Tippecanoe, if nobody knows about this, I do, and I can tell you guys about it. I'll teach you guys about it. So the curse of Tippecanoe was where 9th President William Henry Harrison was in the Army. He went to negotiate in the Indiana Territory to have the Indian Confederacy give up and be a part of the United States, just like all the other Native Americans probably did, or probably were forced to do. They disagreed. Remember, this was during the War of 1812. That means Jackson and Harrison were far away from each other. While Jackson was in Louisiana, Harrison was in Indiana. So, like, right. Okay, so as I was saying, I had to redo my train of thought. Hold on. So, as I was saying, Warren G. Harding did die of a heart attack. Like, Woodrow Wilson did suffer from a stroke. So, Woodrow Wilson suffered from a stroke and did not die, but he died at least a few years after his presidency. Warren G. Harding died, and eventually his successor... Actually, this is a major Republican victory, which transmits a string of victories till 1960. So, then Calvin Coolidge won again. All the other northern states, except... Alright, you know what? So, John W. Davis was literally like a direct descendant to Jefferson Davis. So he won Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia. So he won the southern states, the former Confederate states, minus Oklahoma. So he won the former 11 Confederate states, except for Oklahoma. Oklahoma voted for him because they did. So hold up. Is this like a coincidence? You guys are asking, hold up. Is that a coincidence? This is the only time in history, all the former Confederate states voted for a Democrat. This is the only time this happened in history. In this certain era. And then Calvin Coolidge, he taught us about frugality. He did a lot of good things in his presidency. He did that. He awarded people from World War I. And then we have Herbert Hoover. The Great Depression. The Great Depression was the biggest economic divide, sort of like the Bush-Trump problem. See, the Bush problem was all the banks closed. It was kind of like the Great Economic Collapse of 1828 back in 1928. And then the third greatest one was in 2008.
Thanks. Did you want something else?
I'll take whatever I can get.
And then after that came 2021, where we have the current economic problem. But Donald Trump, he did do some good things. He made our border security safer, and also he put taxes higher. This time, he lowered taxes for the rich. That I have a problem with. I have a problem with that. Because I'm a hardworking person, and I'm not rich. I'm trying to make money off of YouTube. I barely have a subscriber. That's the problem. But anyway, we go next to, after Hoover, we go to Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt. So Franklin D. Roosevelt starts the big Democratic win. In 1932, 1936, 1940, 1944, and then he died in 1940. He died in 1944 from a cerebral hemorrhage. He did fight in World War II. He did fight a little bit in World War II. But Harry S. Truman delivered the big ol' atomic bomb onto the Japanese in Hiroshima. I don't want to bring all that up since I know most of my viewers are probably of Asian descent or Asian Pacific. I don't want to be offensive to them because of what happened. I do apologize that the U.S. did that. I do apologize. But it was an act of war. So I see Hiroshima, it's kind of like Pearl Harbor. It's like, hey, you guys bombed Pearl Harbor and destroy us. You tried to destroy us, we bombed Pearl Harbor. They bombed Pearl Harbor, they bombed us first. Then we went back and bombed them later. So I see that. It's history, and we gotta do that. We just gotta get rid of it. But, anyway, we go next. So basically, Harry S. Truman later becomes president. He does some good things. Then there's Dwight Eisenhower. General Eisenhower does deliver a big Republican dominant. This means he makes 2 big Republican wins for re-election. Then we go to 1960. This is the year. This is it. And this is exactly where we stop for this episode. In 1960, John F. Kennedy is elected President of the United States. But I'm going to tell you this. This is not a very surprising thing. Many people did see a lot of people did not like John F. Kennedy because he was Catholic. So, and also John F. Kennedy wanted to get rights for black citizens, like civil rights. So they didn't like him for that either. I can understand why Florida and Georgia didn't vote for him, especially Virginia and Tennessee. But, other than that, John F. Kennedy had a pretty good presidency until he was eventually shot and killed in Dallas in 1963. Eventually was handed his presidency over to Lyndon B. Johnson, where Johnson signed the Civil Rights Law and ended poverty. So we're going to stop here for the video. So I'm gonna stop here for the video. See you guys later. Peace and goodbye. Have a good life. Take care of each other.